voice that there is an agenda that has a bias towards downtown versus the greater Stamford area. And if you're going to talk about reinventing Stamford, you need to be talking about reinventing greater Stamford. I heard it said that we have components of a compelling vision, but have we done the legwork to carefully examine whether this is a vision that the entire community can buy into and more importantly pay for, and that the East Side is an excellent opportunity to discuss the reinvention of Stamford, and maybe we might want to think in the future of focusing more efforts on the whole East Side development project.
By the way, the 50 improvements to the pedestrian experience in 500 days is not meant to be just downtown. It's also sort of transit piazzas was one of the terms that that group came up with in each of the neighborhood centers, particularly those adjacent to downtown and the connections of those to each other, both by transit and bikeways. So that's a really good point, that this can be too downtown centric, and that team, I think, deliberately conceived that project not to be downtown centric.
I get to report out for this team being a Stamford irresident, if there's such a word. But a committed person to Stamford and reinventing Stamford and loving every minute of it. I guess the 2 points, you actually covered one of our points, which was, the downtown. This has to be bigger than the downtown. But one very key point, which I think has already been realised, is that the elevation of affordable housing and the real issue, that a real barrier, if you haven't got affordable housing and across a continuum of different housing types, affordabilities and structures, etc., you've got a barrier to vibrant downtown. And we need to really be looking at that as part of the overall strategy when it comes to each of the groups, as well as just the creative habitat group, as to how we actually solve that particular issue. Just flicking through to get another one there was the 50 and 500, the comment was made, it's okay to paint a wall, but the question is how to get traffic calming by the city, and that's the real struggle, because the planning process itself is stultifying. And maybe one of the, and this is my sort of comment, the comments that I hear being used around the action teams is, we're mad as hell, we're not going to put up with it anymore. Maybe there's a bit of that needs to be applied to the city in terms of its ability to be able to do some of these things that New York is doing faster than Stamford. And if you look at the reasons behind that, it's purely because the ideas and the environment created by the DOT, the new commissioner for the DOT there, that makes the huge difference. And lastly, if in paraphrasing, that we need to be thinking of the downtown as a critical part of the whole system of the urban experience, but to ask ourselves what compels people to think of Stamford as a 24/7 downtown, not just they go home at night. And one of the issues that we had around that was a lot of corporations have their services and amenities inside the buildings, so that 80,000 people on the streets really shows up on the streets as 10,000.
Okay, Bill.
We're not sure how you guys accomplished all those things in that amount of time. We were modeling the...
Well, they actually started right away.
We were modeling the community cafe experience. We were getting to know each other. We have 3 committed members of Team 3 here, which kind of left me in the lurch because I haven't been close enough to David and Team 3's efforts. And so we were talking about things like how the 50 and 500 are going to be prioritized and how proposals get made. And I can't answer those questions. So, but we were also talking about what an innovation museum could look like. And so no real conclusions, but got to know, we're bonded. Okay?
That's great. David.
Yeah, we had a very robust discussion in our group, and given the hour, I'm going to have to cut it short. I can go for 30 minutes. But we really love the 5,500 idea. That was something that catalyzed all of us, and we love that, to really get to work and to really expend some sweat equity. Most of the discussion focused on the issue of mobility. and really feeling that the mobility group and we in general need to look at mobility within Stamford, not just mobility in terms of the corridor. And a number of really interesting discussion points came up. One is that certainly better bus transportation is needed to reach the outer reaches of Stamford. We desperately need more than one train station. We can use some shuttle buses. We should take a regional transit approach that focuses on New York and New Jersey, the metro New York area, and the hell with Hartford. We should, I didn't say that. That we should really focus on the issue of pedestrian traffic and, you know, the way in which we talked about some interesting issues, the way in which UBS and RBS have become fortresses in terms of, I guess, originally they were supposed to be retail on the ground floor, but because of security concerns out of 9/11, that did not happen. But, you know, the impact on that and that kind of a fortress feeling that is really antithetical to pedestrian traffic. We spoke about the town center, how that also feels like a fortress, and the really need to become much more pedestrian friendly, which we think is intricately part of the issue of transportation. The need for vibrant street life, which is really critical, and just some discussions about better zoning enforcement, putting electric wires underground, just some basic things that can be done to make the city of Stamford a greater pedestrian feel and much more user-friendly.
Okay, so I hope you got the sense that there's a lot going on, and if something struck your fancy, write it down on that sheet that's on your table. I mean, this graphic is meant to represent how interrelated these tasks are. They're all they're all big ideas, and it's a struggle to figure out how we can communicate it all effectively in an hour and then have a decent conversation about it. And we'll, I think, need to think about how to do that better for the next town meeting, which will be sometime in September. So to leave you on a high note, I felt Reinventing Stamford needs a soundtrack, and I don't know, you were all so late coming in the beginning that you probably missed the processional, which was Wake Up. I'm kind of borrowing a little of Philly soul to get some more soul in Stamford. You know, that song was written 35 years ago, but it was talking about no more backward thinking, only thinking ahead. Call for unity and for changing the world. It was a great soul anthem. So as the recessional, I really want to kind of pump you up and remind you that this is not about being plaintiffs to the city or the state or anything else. This is about Stamford citizens taking control of their own destiny. If you want to do something, do it. If you want something to get done, do it. So with that, cue the music. No, next one.